Your mind is a garden. That's not just a metaphor, it's a law. You see, the soil doesn't care what you plant. It will return whatever you sow. That's the way it works. If you plant wheat, it will return wheat. If you plant nightshade, a deadly poison, the soil will return poison. The soil is neutral. It doesn't care. It just does its job. And so it is with the human mind. Whatever you plant, it will return it to you multiplied. Plant weak thoughts, get weak habits. Plant powerful beliefs, get powerful results. But here's the catch. The mind doesn't stop growing just because you're not paying attention. If you're not tending to it, the weeds are taking over. Negativity, worry, doubt, fear, insecurity, they don't need your invitation. They show up on their own. And if you don't do the work to remove them, they take root. They grow tall. They spread. And before you know it, the harvest of your life is nothing but frustration and confusion. The mind responds to what is planted, not what is wished for. You can't hope your way to clarity. You can't wish your way to confidence. Just like a garden, the mind requires planning. It requires preparation. It requires daily attention. You can't just show up once in a while with a bucket of water and expect beautiful flowers to bloom. You need consistency. You need tools. You need commitment. And you need to understand seasons. There's a time to plant, a time to prune, a time to water, and eventually a time to harvest. But the work must be done in its proper season. If you skip the planting, there'll be nothing to reap. If you don't remove the weeds, they'll choke out the good seeds. This isn't magic. It's discipline. It's the result of making the decision to treat your mind as your most valuable property. And what do most people do? They leave the gate wide open. They let anyone walk in. The news anchors, the gossiping coworker, the angry relative, the cynical friend, all these voices planting weeds, doubts, fears, lies. And then they wonder why they're confused, why they feel lost, why nothing makes sense. It's not a mystery. It's the law of the garden. And just like no one else is going to show up to weed your backyard, no one else is going to tend to your thoughts. That's your job. That's your responsibility. No matter how good your intentions are, the results always follow the effort. The mind doesn't care what you meant to do. It responds only to what you actually do. That's the hard truth. But the good news is that it also means you hold the power. If the weeds are growing, it means you've got work to do. If the fruit is missing, it means the planting was missed. But it also means that with just a little effort each day, you can turn it around. 5 minutes reading a good book is planting. 10 minutes listening to something wise and uplifting is watering. Asking better questions is pruning. Spending time in quiet thought is fertilizing. And soon, the garden begins to change. The ground becomes fertile. The roots grow deep. The colors return. The strength reappears. The confusion fades. You walk differently. You speak with purpose. You act with conviction. And that's not luck. That's not fate. That's not some secret miracle. That's gardening. The harvest was there all along. It just needed your attention. It needed your hand. It needed your time. The weeds don't wait, so you can't either. The choice is yours every single day to plant or to postpone, to water or to neglect, to weed or to wish. The results don't lie. The mind is a garden, and it is growing something whether you know it or not. There's a false idea many people carry, and it's this, that education ends the day they receive a certificate or walk across a stage. That once the last exam is over, learning is complete. But that's not how life works. Real education, the kind that builds fortune, wisdom, peace of mind, and confidence, doesn't come from a classroom alone. It comes from daily effort to improve yourself, from reading the right books, from listening to valuable ideas, from studying success and failure. The classroom gives you the foundation, but life gives you the blueprint. And unless you keep building, you're left standing on a slab of concrete, wondering why there's no roof over your head. You can learn from anyone. You can learn from anything. A book, a conversation, a mistake, a mentor, even your own regret can become a powerful lesson if you're paying attention. But the key word is investment, because learning isn't something you stumble into. It's something you commit to. Just like a savings account, your mind grows as you deposit into it. A little here, a little there, daily deposits. You don't need to read for 5 hours, but you do need to read. You don't have to listen to every speaker, but you do need to choose someone who lifts your thinking. Education doesn't demand all your time. It demands just enough of your attention that it shapes your direction. And let's face it, the world is changing fast. What you knew 5 years ago may no longer serve you today. Technology evolves, industries shift, ideas transform. If your mind is stuck in the past, your results will be too. That's why constant learning is no longer optional. It's essential. The people who rise are those who refuse to let their knowledge get stale. They update their thinking. They challenge their beliefs. They sharpen their skills. They treat their mind like a professional treats their tools, with care, with respect, and with the awareness that dull tools produce poor results. Now, here's the beautiful part. You get to choose what you feed your mind. You get to select the mentors, the authors, the philosophies. You can choose wisdom over noise, growth over gossip, solutions over complaints. Every time you open a book, you invite a new voice into your life. Every time you listen to a wise speaker, you trade confusion for clarity. Every time you ask yourself, what can I learn from this? You give yourself an advantage that most people never even seek. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about becoming the most teachable, the most curious, the most willing to improve. People often complain that success is unfair, that life is tilted in favor of the lucky. But if you follow the trail of those who win consistently, you'll often find a pattern. They are always learning, always studying, always growing. They understand that the mind is like a bank. What you deposit is what you can withdraw. And if you're not putting anything in, don't expect anything to come out when you need it. They don't rely on yesterday's knowledge to solve today's problems. They've trained themselves to seek new understanding, to remain humble enough to learn, bold enough to apply, and wise enough to keep going. You don't need a title to learn. You don't need a fancy school or a famous name. All you need is hunger, the hunger to become more, and the discipline to keep at it. 5 minutes with the right book can shift your thinking. One paragraph from a master teacher can rewrite your entire approach. One quote, one idea, one principle can create a ripple effect across your career, your relationships, and your character. That's the power of learning. And the cost of not learning is even greater. Because while you wait, others are moving. While you delay, others are growing. While you assume you already know, someone else is discovering what you ignored. Education is not a phase of life. It is a way of life. There's a world of difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is immediate, emotional, often irrational. It's what happens when the mind has not been trained. A response is thoughtful, measured, guided by principle instead of impulse. It's what happens when the mind has been shaped by discipline. In life, situations will test you. People will misunderstand you, challenge you, provoke you, disappoint you. If you live in reaction, you hand over your power. You allow the world to dictate how you feel, how you speak, how you act. But when you train your mind to respond, you become the one in control, not of the world, but of yourself. And that truly is the only control worth having. A reaction says, how dare they talk to me like that? A response says, what can I learn from this moment, and how should I carry myself now? A reaction slams the door, shouts, accuses, panics. A response breathes, evaluates, decides. One adds fuel to the fire, the other calms the storm. And it doesn't come automatically. You don't respond calmly because life gets easier. You respond calmly because your inner world gets stronger. That strength comes from training, from reading wisdom instead of gossip, from meditating when the noise gets loud, from journaling your thoughts instead of unloading them on someone else, from learning to pause and not be a prisoner of every emotion that knocks on your door. Think about this. Every time you react without thinking, you reinforce a habit. You carve a deeper groove in your mind that says, this is how I deal with life. And then one day you find yourself in a pattern, always stressed, always anxious, always angry. It didn't happen overnight. It happened one reaction at a time. But the good news is that just as habits are created, they can be replaced. You can train your mind to pause before the reply, to listen before the judgment, to question your own assumptions before defending them. That's not weakness. That's strength in its highest form. It's the strength to hold yourself back from doing what's easy and choosing instead what's right. When you respond instead of react, you give yourself time. And time is powerful. In that extra space between stimulus and action lies your freedom. Freedom to choose words that heal, not hurt. Freedom to act with dignity, not drama. Freedom to lead with understanding, not ego. And in that freedom, you begin to shape your character. Because your character isn't revealed in moments of calm. It's exposed in moments of pressure. Anybody can appear wise when everything is going smoothly. But what about when the deal falls through? When the criticism comes? When the plan fails? That's when the untrained mind panics, but the trained mind pivots. The world is noisy. Opinions fly fast. Emotions rise quickly. If you don't train your mind to respond, you'll live on edge. You'll find yourself drained, confused, always in defense mode. You'll lash out when misunderstood. You'll carry grudges. You'll ruin relationships. But when your mind is trained, you're not so easily shaken. You're able to listen to criticism without falling apart. You're able to hear a harsh word and not make it personal. You're able to sit in discomfort without losing your balance. That level of mental discipline isn't given, it's earned through daily effort, through reflection, through practice, through deciding that peace of mind is more valuable than being right in every argument. Responding doesn't mean you never get angry. It means your anger doesn't control you. Responding doesn't mean you accept poor treatment. It means you don't become like the one who mistreated you. Responding is not weakness, it's mastery. Mastery over the one thing that influences every area of your life, your mindset. You don't get to choose every situation, but you do get to choose your interpretation. You do get to choose your action. And that action is the difference between a life built on regret and a life built on respect. Respect for yourself, for others, and for the standards you choose to uphold. The human mind works a lot like a muscle. It thrives on challenge. It grows with effort. It strengthens through repetition. But if neglected, it weakens. Just as muscles shrink without movement, the mind becomes dull without discipline. And the dangerous thing about mental atrophy is that it happens quietly. You don't notice it at first. You go a day without reading, a week without thinking deeply, a month without solving a problem, and slowly your capacity shrinks, your clarity fades, your creativity diminishes. You stop stretching, you stop reaching. And before you know it, you're coasting, living on old knowledge, outdated opinions, and passive assumptions that were never challenged. People train their bodies and understand the value of physical fitness. They lift weights, they run miles, they watch their diet. But the same people often neglect mental fitness, not realizing that the strength of the mind governs the strength of everything else. If your mind is lazy, your actions will be inconsistent. If your mind is weak, your discipline will collapse under pressure. If your mind is undisciplined, no amount of strategy will save you from distraction. The mind is the command center. When it's strong, decisions become easier. When it's sharp, problems become opportunities. When it's resilient, setbacks become setups. Every time you read something challenging, you are lifting mental weight. Every time you solve a problem, instead of complaining about it, you're doing mental push-ups. Every time you resist a lazy impulse, you're training mental endurance. And just like physical training, it's uncomfortable at first. The weight feels heavy. The resistance feels painful. But over time, what once seemed hard becomes natural. You build capacity, you build confidence, and you develop something, and that very few people have: mental toughness. Not arrogance, not coldness, but the kind of toughness that keeps you moving when others quit, that keeps you focused when others panic, that keeps you thoughtful when others react. There's no shortcut to mental strength. It's earned in the daily grind. It's earned in moments when you choose focus over distraction, books over entertainment, effort over excuses. And the more you use your mind, the more it gives back to you. It starts connecting ideas faster. It starts spotting patterns more clearly. It starts seeing the big picture where others only see fragments. The world becomes less confusing because you've developed the discipline to think through things. You don't accept every opinion as truth. You don't fall for every trend. You've built a filter, a frame, a structure that holds your thoughts up under pressure. A trained mind doesn't crumble in chaos. It adapts. It remains centered. It knows how to navigate complexity because it's been there before. And that training doesn't come from comfort. It comes from challenge, from reading difficult material, from engaging in hard conversations, from sitting in silence and thinking through your fears, your goals, your principles. That's work. But it's the kind of work that pays compound interest. You begin to stand taller, not physically, but mentally. You trust yourself more. You stop looking for easy answers and start asking better questions. You stop blaming and start building. Too many people live on mental autopilot. They stop learning, they avoid thinking. They rely on old scripts written by other people, and then they wonder why they feel powerless, scattered, directionless. The answer is simple. The mind hasn't been exercised. It's weak, underused, untrained. And the longer it's left that way, the more dependent it becomes on distraction and entertainment to feel alive. But that's not real strength. That's survival. And you weren't made just to survive. You were made to grow, to expand, to think clearly, to act decisively, to live intentionally. And all of that requires a mind that is ready, strong, disciplined, and in motion. There is no growth without resistance, no strength without struggle, no mental mastery without mental effort. If you want clarity, you have to earn it. If you want wisdom, you have to seek it. If you want discipline, you have to practice it, not once, not occasionally, but daily. Just like any muscle, the mind needs consistent use. And the moment you stop using it, you start losing it. Your mind is sacred ground. It's the most valuable property you own. And yet many people leave it wide open, unguarded, unprotected. They let anyone walk in with their opinions, their negativity, their drama, their fear. Imagine owning a beautiful home and leaving every door unlocked, letting strangers track in dirt, destroy the furniture, rearrange the pictures on the wall, and tell you how to live inside your own house. You would never allow that physically, yet mentally. That's what happens when you don't guard your mind. The thoughts you allow and shape the emotions you feel. The emotions you feel shape the decisions you make. And the decisions you make shape the life you live. It all begins with what you allow through the front door of your thinking. There are voices everywhere, on TV, in your social media feed, in the conversations you overhear, in the people you spend your time with. Each one is trying to plant something in your mental soil. Some are planting seeds of confidence, encouragement, vision. Others are planting seeds of fear, doubt, jealousy, scarcity. You may not be able to stop every voice from speaking, but you can control which ones you give your attention to. You don't have to consume every headline. You don't have to respond to every comment. You don't have to absorb every complaint. That's what it means to guard your mind. It means being selective, being intentional, not out of arrogance, but out of wisdom. Because the cost of mental chaos is too high, your focus is a limited resource. You only get so much of it each day, and if it's constantly being pulled in 100 directions by voices that don't align with your values, your goals, or your purpose, you'll find yourself exhausted, confused, and stuck. Guarding your mind isn't about being closed-minded. It's about being discerning. There's a difference between being open to new ideas and being open to anything. One leads to growth. The other leads to distraction. If you let everything in, eventually you won't know what you believe. You'll be swayed by the loudest voice instead of the truest voice. That's a dangerous place to be. The company you keep matters. Not just physically, but mentally. The books you read are company. The podcasts you listen to are company. The content you scroll through is company. Ask yourself, is this lifting me or draining me? Is this sharpening my mind or dulling it? Is this helping me grow or keeping me stuck? You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be protective. If you spend your day surrounded by small thinking, don't be surprised when your dreams start to shrink. If you spend your hours absorbing fear-based media, don't be surprised when peace of mind starts slipping away. You can't plant weeds and expect roses. Guarding your mind also means being careful with the inner dialogue. Sometimes the most dangerous voice isn't from the outside, it's from within. That voice that tells you you're not good enough, that you'll never make it, that it's too late. You must learn to recognize that voice and challenge it. Where did it come from? Who gave it permission to speak? And most importantly, is it true? A guarded mind knows how to filter lies, even when they sound familiar. It knows how to interrupt the pattern and insert truth. And it doesn't let a temporary feeling dictate a permanent belief. This discipline is quiet. No one sees you doing it. No one applauds you for it. But the results are visible. A guarded mind leads to clearer thinking, stronger boundaries, better choices. You begin to stand firm in what you value. You stop wasting time arguing with people who don't understand your vision. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop being emotionally hijacked by every rude comment or bad piece of news. You become steady-rooted, focused, not because the world got easier, but because your mind got stronger. And that strength came from protecting what comes in, from being the gatekeeper of your thoughts, and from refusing to let noise become your normal. Success doesn't just show up on your doorstep. It doesn't knock politely and ask to be let in. It responds to preparation. It responds to discipline. It responds to the mindset you bring to each day. A trained mind becomes a magnet for trained results, not because of luck, not because of fate, but because when your thinking is right, your actions follow. When your actions are right, your habits form. And when your habits align with your values, your results start to reflect the life you've been quietly building behind the scenes. It's not magic. It's the math of mindset. The world gives back what you send out, and a sharp, clear, focused mind sends out a different signal than a distracted, reactive, passive one. An untrained mind is always chasing, always hoping, always wishing. It waits for the right moment. It blames the wrong circumstances. It looks outside for solutions to problems that are rooted within. But a trained mind gets to work. A trained mind builds. It doesn't wait for motivation. It builds momentum. It doesn't need perfect conditions. It creates progress from what's available. A trained mind understands that the results others admire are built in silence, in solitude, in those early morning hours and late night decisions that no one sees. It's built when you choose to study instead of scroll, to plan instead of panic, to think deeply instead of react quickly. When your mind is trained, you begin to see patterns others miss. You spot the small clues in conversations, in data, in outcomes. You see that failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of the formula. You stop chasing shortcuts and start trusting principles. You understand that results are not a reflection of effort alone, they're a reflection of alignment. Alignment between thought, belief, and behavior. A trained mind doesn't waste energy on what can't be controlled, it focuses on what it can improve. And in that focus, it finds clarity. In that clarity, it finds movement. And in that movement, it builds results that others call impressive, but you know are simply the outcome of consistency. You can't fake a trained mind. You can pretend for a while, dress sharp, talk smart, repeat motivational quotes. But life has a way of testing what's real. When pressure hits, the truth shows. An untrained mind crumbles, scrambles, blames. A trained mind stays grounded. It recalibrates, learns, adjusts. That stability becomes your competitive advantage. People begin to trust your judgment. Doors start to open. Opportunities begin to find you. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because your thinking did. And once your thinking shifts, your entire field of vision expands. You begin to move with purpose, not panic. With strategy, not reaction, and it doesn't stop at achievement. A trained mind creates trained relationships. It communicates clearly, listens deeply, and avoids unnecessary drama. It knows the difference between responding and reacting, between feedback and insult, between growth and comfort. In business, it sees long-term gain where others are blinded by short-term temptation. In health, it chooses discipline over indulgence. In life, it prioritizes meaning over distraction. Every result becomes a reflection of what's happening in your inner world. And because your inner world is now refined, focused, and prepared, your outer world starts to mirror that excellence. You attract not what you want, but what you are. Not what you dream, but what you train for. The trained mind knows that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not filled by hope, it's filled by preparation. So it prepares, it studies, it practices, it reflects, not for the applause, not for the trophy, but for the strength that comes from knowing you are becoming the kind of person who doesn't just chase results but earns them. That shift is what separates the average from the exceptional. Not more talent, not more luck, just a deeper commitment to mastering the one thing that controls everything else. Your mind. Train your mind, because everything else flows from it. The strength of your thoughts determines the strength of your decisions. The quality of your inner world reflects in the results of your outer world. You don't rise by chance. You rise by choice. You rise when you treat your mind like a garden that must be tended daily. You rise when you continue to educate yourself beyond the classroom, not once in a while, but as a way of life. You rise when you learn to pause, to respond instead of reacting, and when you resist the urge to live on emotional impulse. You rise when you stretch your thinking like a muscle, exercising it with challenges, with questions, with effort, not letting it grow soft in comfort. You rise when you guard your mental space, protecting it from the noise, the negativity, and the narratives that shrink your potential. And most of all, you rise when you understand that success is not random. It's a result. A trained mind builds a trained life, and that life, brick by brick, moment by moment, becomes your legacy.